All right, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us today for our webinar on how to optimize pricing without killing your margins. I'm excited to have two powerhouse founders with us today from the Amazon industry. We have Nachman Lieser, who is the founder of ConnectBooks, and Chad Rubin, the founder of Prophecy. My name is Colleen Quattlebaum, and I'm the director of marketing at ConnectBooks. I'll be your moderator today. But let's take about 30 seconds or so, and we'll have Nachman and Chad just do a brief introduction of themselves. So Nachman?
Hi, thank you so much, Colleen, for hosting and putting this all together. So my name is Nachman Lieser. I'm the founder of ConnectBooks, and our mission is to bring clarity to Amazon sellers. It's not just about automating the accounting, it's about actually understanding it. So we help people automate, but our real focus is really understanding your profit and loss, understanding where you're making money, understanding your balance sheet, understanding your inventory, understanding sometimes people make money, but their cash is tied up, all that. So we're all about giving you the absolute most clarity.
Great. And Chad?
I love that. Hi, everybody. Chad Rubin here. I have been in the Amazon space for quite a long time. I want to say it's about 17 years now, which makes me an OG. Colleen, you've been in the space for also a really long time. I feel like we kind of started off somewhere around that time frame.
Right, about 15 years for me. So, yeah.
Amazing. So look, for me, I'm all about solving problems. And so when I first came to this space, right, I had an e-commerce business. I still have it today. We sell vacuum filters, coffee filters, air filters. Then I saw there's no community on Amazon, so we started the Prosper Show. The Prosper is now the biggest conference for Amazon sellers. It was acquired in 2019. Then I started a company called Skubana, which was order management inventory. So as a big seller selling multi-channel, I couldn't find a really good all-in-one solution that was competitive, that was unique and modern. So we built Skubana. And so now I run Prophecy. So we turn pricing into profit. We use AI to set prices and to grow profit. And so, looking forward to dropping a whole lot of nuggets. I want to make sure that we're making it super worthwhile for everyone joining today. And so that's my intention for today's call.
Great. And with that being said, I just want to tell everybody to please use the Q&A that's here in Zoom so that we can ask questions to Chad and Nachman that you want to get answers on. But I do have some questions that I plan to ask as well. So just to kind of review some of the topics that we'll cover today, we're going to talk about some pricing and profit myths in the industry, what you should not be doing, how to get clarity on your numbers, price and profit quirks that they have seen that are proven to work, how to get insights to help you make smarter pricing decisions, how to identify your biggest profit killers and avoid underpricing. And then since these guys have been in the industry for so long, they have a lot of valuable lessons that they've learned either firsthand or with clients that they've worked with. So we definitely want to hear some lessons they've learned. And then Q4 is approaching pretty soon. So we'll ask them about any tips or insights they have as we head into the holiday season for sellers. But this is going to be very conversational, very rapid fire, founder to founder. So we're not going to use slides anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and just stop sharing my screen and we'll just have a good conversation here. So just as an icebreaker to kind of kick things off, Nachman and Chad, could you share a resource, maybe it's a book, a podcast, or a mentor that you've worked with that really changed how you think about pricing or profitability on Amazon?
Sure. Chad, you want to go on that first?
Sure. You know what? Funny enough is that I think there's a lot of groupthink that I see that happens in the Amazon space. So, people are in these groups and everyone's doing the same thing. And everything leads to selling something, right? So it's listing optimization, or maybe it's PPC management. These are all things at the end of the day that I think help Amazon more than everybody else. And so when I sold Skubana in 2021, April, I needed to find some purpose in life and some growth. And I sat in the back and stared at a tree and just got my own mental thinking space. I was like, wait, we have 250 products. Why do we never change price? And how do I know that my pricing is right? How do I know I'm not leaving money on the table? And I started thinking about Uber and Lyft and Expedia and hedge funds. And so I just started to really ask questions. And I think that's really to me, that's a mentor in itself. When you start really getting deep and asking questions that nobody else is asking, you start finding results quickly. So I haven't had a pricing mentor. I can tell you that on a profit mentor specifically, I do the same thing for my current business that I do with all my other businesses. I just like look to solve problems and find those problems and try to find the answers to those problems and figure it out. And I can go through more detail, like how I'm figuring out other problems. But for pricing, it was really just now scaling, like testing. There's no playbook. And yeah, asking questions is the best mentor, in my opinion.
Well, I would share that I mean, first of all, it's fascinating, but I would share that, I'm serving a lot the e-commerce space, but I'm not an e-commerce seller. I never was. So for me, one of the things how I would say one of the best stuff that I've learned a lot, which has helped in my business, was a lot more like following EOS and, more on the accountability and, having proper job descriptions and was more on that side, not so much on the e-commerce space. But one thing I did want to share, which was when I joined once, I think it was actually with the MDS group, Million Dollar Seller. And what they did was they did like I think they called it think tank networking, where basically everybody just comes into a room and you get a card and you randomly sit down on a table. So I actually landed on a very good table with a lot of great people there. And you have 10 people around it and everybody like shares one idea that worked for them. What I liked a lot about that was that, you got to meet new people and everybody opened up about something that worked for them. And me, not even as an Amazon seller, learned a lot of great, valuable stuff from other people. So my takeaway was that, a lot of times networking with other founders that are like similar sized businesses as you, that's where you will learn a lot of like great ideas, which something that you would have probably never thought of. And that's not something you're going to find in a book, because it's really hard to find a particular book that's going to guide you directly for your business, especially when very niche in an Amazon space. But if you network in the right place and network with the right people, you'll definitely get a lot.
Yeah, and if you're
I
not
love that.
familiar with EOS, I did put a link in there. It's the Entrepreneurial Operating System. I use that for the past 10 years, and it's a great way to just structure your organization, just keep things moving on pace, deal with the biggest issues, and hold everybody accountable. So it's a great way to structure a company.
Are you guys running EOS model there at NetBooks?
Halfway. So only halfway. Yeah, but that
Yeah,
half
you
has
don't need to be
helped us.
religious about it, but like, are you doing L10 meetings?
We're having meetings, but it's a lot more like about on the EOS, it's a lot about understanding the job description, which I find a lot of like, a lot of times people like have a lot of employees and they just like lose sight and everything, and like understanding like what is your job in the company and then make sure you excel at that, and like just being clear about that part, which for me in the early on days, a lot of times like you're like so like foggy about what's just going on, and that has been a real eye opener for me.
All right, well,
Nice.
let's dive
We
into
run on.
questions. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just saying
Go ahead.
we do L10 meetings here. I find L10 meetings to be awesome. It's a great like a way to align. I find it to be a very impactful meeting. Allow me to run the business, know what the bottlenecks are, and like solve those bottlenecks pretty quickly.
All right. So as far as I guess my first question related specifically to pricing or profitability is let's start with some of the myths. What is like one of the worst pricing tips or profit myths that you're seeing floating around the Amazon space? Or maybe Nachman, maybe it's an accounting myth, that's really dangerous. So what would you say that people should should clarify that it's a myth?
I can go first on the pricing side. I can't tell you when tariffs hit, every guru and their mother was like, just raise prices. And I can tell you that that is dangerous and very reckless information, because if you just guess pricing, or if you're just going up 5%, you don't know how your competitors, how Amazon, and how your customers react to pricing. And so you're just guessing math at that point. They don't know, these gurus don't know your landed cost. They don't know your refund rate. They don't know your cash constraints. They don't know if you're liquidating inventory or you're optimizing for profit. And so to me, that's That's one really, really, really big mistake because it allows you to make erroneous decisions that have what I consider to be second order consequences happening in the business, where if you change your price, it affects your order volume tomorrow. Like today's price affects your order volume tomorrow. So anyway, I think that's a big, big myth that I want to make sure that we clear the air around. And it requires you to be smart, to consciously change price, and to let data drive the decisions in the business, not letting a guru or someone's advice drive decisions in your business.
So what I have seen a lot about price is that what I've seen a lot is that, and we have actually had actual case studies with clients that they didn't know. Everybody's scared to raise a price, and that's something, what Chad constantly brings up. You want to really have the right data to make the right decisions and have the right pricing. But it's something that I would say takes some guts, and a lot of times people are very much set in their way. Let's say they're charging for a certain product $99 for the past 5 years. They're scared to move it up, but they don't want to play around with it. So we have had actual case studies with certain people where they were very locked into their price and stuff was moving well. The problem was that the business wasn't making the proper amount of money. Now, normally, if you're not making money, you move up your price. But since they were lacking visibility and they didn't have the proper clarity in their numbers, they actually never knew what to do. And we had this many, many times. And once we sat down with the customers and we explained to them how ConnectBooks works and how your bookkeeping is supposed to look and how to make sure that you have the most accurate, up-to-date cost. So let's say two big examples. Number one is if you're not including your tariffs and your freight into not doing your landed cost, then you don't really have your true cost. I, for example, was working with a seller who was making no profits. He thought he was, but after we put in all his landed costs and tariffs, he realized he wasn't making profit. So there's one other option: increase your price. So at that point, we're basically telling him, look, if you don't increase your price, I might as well shut your business. So that's when, he had to really move up his price. And actually today they're making nice money. The order value might have slowed down a little bit, but they're actually profitable. So they're ordering a little bit less, but they're actually making money. A different scenario that I've seen, this is more for companies that have their own warehouse, is where they don't understand their break-even point. So we dealt with a different seller who was making around 10% margin, and he thought that he is doing well. And the problem was that he's constantly constrained for cash. So I explained to him, based on what your overhead is, it's either you figure out how to leave your overhead the same and triple the size of your business, or there's an easier option where you just get your margins up to 20%, and that's when you're going to start actually making money. So then the same problem kicked in, I can't increase price, competition, back and forth. So I'm like, look, this is not a business. You might as well close it. So when he had no other choice, that's when he did it. So I'm taking out of this is that sometimes that it's important to have the real clarity to understand how the pricing affects what you're charging. And the point is you want to have the real visibility, and people are always scared to play around with the price. But sometimes when they see these no other option, that's when they do it. And that's actually when they actually start becoming profitable and they start making a lot more money.
Yeah, so I mean,
For
a lot of
sure.
sellers their heads are spinning, they're overwhelmed. They don't even know where to begin to get the data. What do you suggest that they do first to get clarity on their numbers and margins so they can even identify, some of these issues or understand how they should price their items or what their margin truly is?
Well, the first thing is they have to be properly set up. They have to get, using a tool like ConnectBooks, which number one brings in all the sales, brings in every single fee, even placement fees get itemized, AWD fees get itemized. We itemize everything. But on the other side, you also need to have someone who helps you out with your bookkeeping, meaning to make sure you have a bookkeeper or use a bookkeeping company who is going to take all your bills, because this is a time-consuming process. It's not like just punching in numbers, because the costs are changing every day. The tariffs one day are 15%, next day they're 45%, and then they're back down. So it's not just like, oh, I pay for this $10 every single day. You have to really, really know what the number is. So it's getting set up the proper way and having the proper systems put in place so that you can focus on your business, and then you can see, hey, what is my margin? What am I really making, and where do I need to be at?
Yeah, and for new sellers, Chad, when it comes to pricing or profitability, what advice would you give to a brand new seller just starting out?
Yeah, well, I think it's brand new so I think everything pricing is about what's your intention, and pricing touches all parts of your business. So pricing touches your inventory, pricing touches your finances, QuickBooks, for example. Pricing touches your PPC. And so I think getting extreme clarity, crystal clear on what your goal is for specific ASINs. And once you can do that, you can start testing to understand how the market reacts. What's the sensitivity of both Amazon, your customers, and your competitor? So, someone here, and maybe we can give this away in the show notes, or you can email me at chat@prophecy.com. I started off using a spreadsheet that has an ASIN, and you collect all this data, and then you start making iterative, small, tiny changes to see, well, how does the market react? What happens to your
Losing your
conversion rate?
chat.
What is compared to what? Can you hear me?
Chat.
Sorry, it was
Yeah, your
breaking up a little
voice
bit,
is
Chad.
not
Awesome. That's cool. I do have full full internet, but what I was just saying is like understanding the intention you have for a specific ASIN. So, and making iterative small price tests to see how the market, how Amazon, and how your customers react to price changes. And I would do that whether you're a brand new seller or you're trying to harvest. Understanding the intention is number one. And number two, if you're a new seller, I would look at like how other very successful products launched. So going into specific categories that are very difficult, like garlic press, for example, and seeing what was their pattern and behavior around price changes when they first launched, to see how low, for example, and how the Amazon algorithm would rank their product based on specific price changes that were made.
That's good. Good advice. Just as a reminder, feel free to put any questions that you have in the Q&A here, and we'd be happy to answer any of your direct questions. But as we're talking about the competition, trying to beat out the competition, what are some data or KPIs that you say are most important to look at when it comes to making smarter pricing decisions and beating out your competition? And how can sellers get those behind the scenes insights easily?
You're talking about specifically data?
Yeah, just data or KPIs that might help with those pricing decisions.
So I think first of all, is like setting up a KPI for yourself. Am I trying to harvest profit without sacrificing rank? Am I trying to drive unit velocity, or am I trying to drive revenue? So knowing like what that is very important. And then start taking all this data, and most importantly, probably the data that actually matters for pricing decisions. For example, understanding your contribution margin after ads, understanding the elasticity of your own product ASIN, understanding your keyword share of voice is very important. Your refund rate and your return rate, your conversion rate, seeing when you make a price change as your competition. So I think it starts with collecting data. And then, by the way, after you're tracking competitor movements, you're looking at your keyword movements, you're tying PPC data back to pricing data. The simplest way is to just load it into ChatGPT 5, and have it analyze what are the decisions, what are you seeing. But it really starts with your own decisions first, and then you're comparing and seeing the analysis breakdown from ChatGPT, and out of that can create the outputs that you want to make even better decisions.
Any data points
what I-
that you think are important that he didn't mention, Nachman?
Nachman, go ahead, please.
Oh, yeah, when it comes to profitability or, pricing, beating out the competition, anything else you want to share?
Well, I think it goes more line back to say like understanding, the first thing is knowing your real numbers, knowing your cost, and ConnectBooks at a glance will provide you conversion rates and your ACoS, TACoS, the ad spend. We also provide you return rate and all that. But there's also another very big aspect which ConnectBooks can definitely help out a lot with pricing, is that we have something called a comparison report. So the reason why I like comparison is that it's like in business, when I started off my business in the beginning, I remember I hired my first employee, and I was like, oh, she's good, but I didn't really understand, you know, the full potential. Like she was doing like a certain amount of work. Then I went and I hired another employee, and all of a sudden the second employee was like doing 3 times the amount of work than the first one, and she was still bored. So that's when I started realizing that, hey, the first employee is not really good. So sometimes when you look at a certain product, you're like, wow, I made, let's say last month, $1,000 profit off this product, but who said $1,000 is the best? Maybe if you use a software like Prophecy, you can make $3,000 profit, you know? How do you know? So the thing what I love about the comparison report is you can take your metrics and compare month over month, day over day, week over week. You can do, let's say, this year versus last year. You can do so many different variables. And what you want to do is you want to constantly take different initiatives and you want to try different stuff on how to optimize and make it better, whether it's going to be increased ad spend, whether it's getting a reprisal like Prophecy, or whether it's updating your images or update your listings. You want to constantly enhance it and, you know, move it up the right way, but you also want to be able to track it. You want to be able to see, you know, what we have seen a lot of times, let's say, for example, like Black Friday or like Cyber Monday, where the sales go up like crazy, but not always as profit. I've actually sat with a couple of customers, and when we compared their profitability from an average day to like Black Friday, they actually made an average day more profit. It's because the sales went up, PPC went up like crazy. They started putting in discounts and promos, and they forgot to just factor in the full bottom line. So you should always be trying new stuff. You should always be looking out there for different ways how to improve and increase conversions and increase listings. But you also want to have that comparison where you can, you know, compare all the different metrics. You can even compare conversions and all the other stuff, so you can actually see that you're moving your way up instead of just like kind of going blindly.
Yeah, so getting in the habit of comparing regularly, that's good. And I guess depending on the stage that you're in with your product, you know, maybe it's worth it for the Black Friday sales to, you know, just sell more, get the word out, build awareness about your product if you're just launching something. But if it's a product that's been around for a while, you don't want to cut into your margins necessarily that much.
But
Now,
one thing I would,
yeah. Oh, go ahead.
would add on one more thing is that when you just mentioned about launching the product, is that another thing that I've seen a lot of times sellers do, which I highly recommend, is setting a budget. I've seen a lot of times everybody, you know, wants to be tomorrow. Everybody wants to be huge the next day. The only problem is that you have that amount of cash. So some guys have more, some guys have less, but everybody's limited with a certain amount of cash unless you're the US government. But in terms of that, what I always like to do is like set a, like, let's say, for example, when you launch, let's say set like a time frame, 3 months, 6 months, and after that you kill the product. When you want to put a certain strap in it and say like, we're ready to lose X amount of money on launching the product, and then we have to move forward. Usually what also I've seen what good sellers do is like they'll launch 20 to, let's say in 1 year, they'll launch, let's say 30 new products, but with the goal of at least 20 of them staying on and 10 of them they're going to eventually kill. But usually if they have a good strap, you make sure that it doesn't go overboard. And I've seen many times, like I'm talking to sellers like, why losing product? Why losing money in this product? It's like, we're still launching. I said, you're still launching for how long? Like set yourself a time, set yourself a date. And after that point, if it doesn't work, just move on.
Chad, do you have any advice when it comes to launching a product in regards to pricing, or maybe some weird pricing habits that, you know, that other people have tried that have worked?
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely address the weird habits. Let me think. I think, yeah, so even my own e-commerce business, before starting Prophecy, I would track competitor prices obsessively. And the funny thing is that like the internet, like everything is revealed on the internet. That's the beautiful thing about the internet. Everything's exposed, but I would never copy them. So I would keep what I call a competitor price diary, right? A log of their daily price changes, promo schedules, and stockouts. And when I talk to most brands, they would think, just match, you know, when they launch a product or when they're pricing a product, just match everyone else's price. They must have tested it. You have no idea that when you're just copying competitors' price on Amazon, just launching a price at the same price, you're handing over your profit decision to a brand that probably copied another brand that's probably broke. So copying is like this weird quirk on Amazon. And maybe it's because of like people grew up in this world on Amazon of like copying products and doing product research, But copying price is just dangerous. It's guessing and it's dangerous math because you're inheriting all the mistakes. And if you underprice, for example, you're following them into a margin graveyard. And if you're overpricing without the brand equity and the reviews to justify it, you're burning a ton of money and you're burning a ton of sessions. So the best approach is to use the data, understand your conversion elasticity, your PPC, how your PPC and price could be harmonized together. And that's how you can overcome this specifically, this myth or this quirk.
Good. Well, yeah. So, I mean, that's definitely dangerous to match prices of others. And that's probably why many sellers are bleeding margin without even realizing it sometimes. They're just copying others, and then before they know it, when they really dive into their profit margins, they realize that, that they're killing their profit. So speaking of killing profit, bleeding margin, Nachman, how can sellers identify their profit killers before it's too late? Any tips there to make sure that their SKUs are, actually making them profit, not killing their profit?
So I have a very interesting twist on that. For the last, I've been out on, in the e-commerce space doing accounting around 7 years. I mean, I'm doing accounting already for 12 years, but in the e-commerce space around 7 years. And in my early on days, everybody's always talking about profit, making sure every product is profitable, making sure you're making money after storage fees, ad spend, returns, and all this stuff. But one thing that really hit me recently a lot, which I've seen, is more it's cash flow, not profit. Now, what do I mean by cash flow? What I've seen a lot of sellers recently is that they're pretty good at understanding their profits. I would say any decent sized seller usually they got a pretty decent grip on it. And what I've seen a lot of them fail is that, let's say, for example, a particular product, they overpurchase. They're bringing in a lot of stock. And what ends up happening is that they get very lost and they don't know where their cash is tied up. So they're looking at the product and saying, well, hey, this product I made $10,000 last month. That's beautiful. But the question is, how much stock do you have from this product? How long, did you buy enough for 3 months or did you buy enough for 9 months? If you bring it from a particular product for 9 months, you're not making more money, meaning unless you figure out a way how to sell it faster. But if you're going to be selling it at the same rate, then that product is tying up your cash for 9 months. So the solution is to either, buy less and buy more frequent. And I see this happen day in, day out. So one of the things that we've been working on, which is our latest release, is an inventory module. But the idea behind the inventory module, which I myself was, as I'm working closely with sellers, I'm helping them with their bookkeeping and CFO services. What we struggle a lot to understand is how fast do they cycle over these products. So when they're ordering a product, if you're making a calculation, okay, I'm going to, let's say, buy 10,000 units, are you literally going to be selling 3,500 units a month, or are you going to be selling 1,000 units a month? Now, if you're only selling 1,000 units a month, and this product is going to cost you quite some money, then this is going to end up tying your cash. Now, the problem is that they don't see it on their profit and loss. When they look at their profit and loss, wow, look, this product is making money, this product is making money. But the question is not how much it's making. The question is how much it's tying up. So that's something really important, which on a small scale, if you have 10 to 20 SKUs, not a big deal. But the minute you start bumping into a couple hundred SKUs, if you don't have a good grasp on your inventory and understanding how fast it spins over, you might find yourself in a situation where you are profitable, but you're strapped for cash just because everything is tied up in the inventory and it's just not moving fast enough.
Yeah, great advice. Very good. So we are starting to get some questions in. So we'll start to address some of these questions from the audience. So the first one, how about for Chad? What's the best way to deal with a race to the bottom pricing situation?
Race to the bottom. Well, first of all, I think most repricers are buy box repricers. And so a lot of that is just a pissing contest of who can have the lowest price to win the buy box, right? So that's not what Prophecy is and isn't really how you should run pricing when you're a private label brand. You want to price across, you want to do a reverse ASIN lookup, find your hero keywords, go out and find your competition and look at that competitive data set. Now, every ASIN is its own unique snowflake, right? So your pricing, your reviews, your BSR, your inventory level, all of that is different from your competition's. And so the best approach is not to just not is to use competition as a signal, not anything else, right? It's just like a one data point. It's there's this great investor that talked about collecting dots, being a dot collector. And so this is just one dot that needs to be collected across a variety of dots to create the right signal for you to price your product. So in terms of race to the bottom, like just because a competitor is going down, when they go low, doesn't mean you go lower. It means sometimes when they go low, you go high. And so it just depends on your elasticity, your reviews, on your images, depends on your PPC spend, because you can use that to amplify your results as a business. Price and PPC can really be aligned and in uniform go together to amplify your profit performance. And so my response would be like, let the data drive everything. And I think that becomes an advantage. And data, anyone can collect data right now, but I think the next advantage of data collection is actually operationalizing data, right? Using that to create a competitive advantage that you can use in your business to unlock more growth and to make smarter, faster, and better decisions than your competition.
Yeah, and so I think the next question you pretty much answered. Are there situations where it's better to lose the buy box than match the lowest price? And so the answer is yes.
Well, so the buy box, losing the buy, so a few things. One is if you're just repricing to win the buy box, we don't do that at Prophecy. That's not where I focus my energy. We focus on living and dying by the search engine ranking page for a keyword. So if you're your own brand, you don't compete with anybody else for the buy box. What you want to be doing is testing price, testing it and doing the homework to understand what's working and what's not working for your specific listing. And you're doing this systematically. So this is how I would structure it. I would take a spreadsheet. And again, if anybody is listening right now and wants this framework, I can share a spreadsheet that shows how you pull in different signals and then start evaluating those signals in ChatGPT to help you make better decisions around your price. But yeah, I would look at all these signals to help you drive your intention, your goal for the outcome of that specific SKU. That's what I would do if it was me and doing this manually to make sure that my price is a stronger price that protects and incentivizes what I want to produce for my specific ASIN. It might be profit, it might be keyword share of voice, it might be rank, it might be unit velocity. But having the data at your fingertips and having someone pull all of that is I think the first and most important step.
Good, thank you. That's very helpful. So the next question is, how can I factor in hidden costs like returns, storage fees, or ads into my pricing decisions?
I'll jump in on that one.
Yeah.
What I would say is it's obviously you're gonna have to take the initiative to like estimate what it's gonna be. But the most important part is to reflect on your past. Meaning, let's say you set your price at a certain point, which let's say you estimate a 5% return rate, and you estimate a certain amount of storage fees and returns. And sometimes I've seen many times people, let's say, make a mistake where they use the FBA revenue calculator. They use that as a guide, like that's what it's gonna be. It's a good estimated tool, but like one of the things that's impossible to estimate on the revenue calculator is knowing the returns. It's going to depend how well your product is and how well you perfected it. Or ad spend. Ad spend is really something very hard to predict. Once you sell the product for a little while, you get more comfortable with what the proper ad spend should be. But if you're launching a new product, it's going to be really hard to know that. So, you do your best that you can. And what I always say is the best is that, like, if you want to set yourself goals for the next year and you want to break your yearly goals into quarterly goals and then into monthly goals, what you want to do is you want to have a certain goal on your profit and where you want to stand at. And the most important part always is to look back and see how you did. So if you have like a certain vision that this product is going to bring you, let's say, $1,000 profit, then at the end of the month, you want to look back and say, hey, did I actually make $1,000? Yes or no. And that's going to help you get better. And that's going to tell you, that's how you'll be able to see. But one thing I do know is that if you never look back, it's going to be really hard to know what to do better the next month.
Very good. All right. And Chad, can dynamic pricing strategies work for slower moving products, or is it only for high volume SKUs? So dynamic pricing strategies.
Yeah. Yep. So we have a model that works with low volume SKUs as well. So we work up and down the range. So we can work with low volume SKUs, high volume SKUs. Of course, the more data we can chew on, the better the outcome, the better results, because if you're doing more velocity and you're changing and we're capitalizing on these micro inefficiencies that are on your account, there's more money that we can make you. But yeah, we can work with small SKUs, low volume SKUs as well.
Great. And how can someone balance short-term revenue with long-term brand perception when they are considering their pricing decisions?
Yeah. So I think there's this core tension between short-term revenue pushes you to grab cash now. This could be discounts, it could be aggressive price cuts, it could be with lightning deals. And long-term brand perception demands you to hold value, right? It signals quality. You can keep customers anchored to a higher willingness to pay price. And if you lean too hard on the short or too hard on the long, right, you actually can mess things up, right? If you're chasing revenue at all costs, or if you're ignoring your cash, your business can go out of business. So to balance this specifically, I like to look at this metric called profit per session. Profit per session allows you to really evaluate every price move, and it allows you to fluctuate if you want to do a short-term price to boost cash, or in the long term if you want, or if you're if your profit tanks per session, it goes in a different direction, then you can actually go the other way. So it allows you to really understand what's happening specifically and lets you use that ratio to make more strategic decisions about the balance of long-term versus short-term. Hopefully that answers your question. If not, I'm happy to answer offline. Hopefully I answered that as well as I could off the cuff. But I think it also goes back to tracking your elasticity, right? So knowing exactly how much volume you're going to lose at a 10, 20, 30% price point difference. And then leveraging PPC, which is something that Prophecy is doing now, as a buffer, so you could capitalize on driving more artificial demand to a higher price point to make more money as a business.
Great. Yeah, and again, if you didn't answer your question all the way, feel free to make another comment in the Q&A. Debbie is asking, will you speak to brands with 1P relationships with Amazon? What can we do to have an effect on Amazon retail pricing, I guess?
So I guess the question is like, if you're a 1P seller, you're kind of screwed, right? Because you don't really have control. You don't have control of your listing. Amazon penny pinches you and nickels and dimes you for everything, every chargeback, every possible thing. So you lose this advantage. I always think that 3P sellers have the best advantage because they're selling direct to consumer. They also get access to more reporting than 1P does. I don't know if Nachman has like a different perspective here, and I'm open to different perspectives, but I've always been shouting from the rooftops to go 3P all the way. But yeah, open to your take on that, Nachman.
I mean, I work closely with 1P sellers. I've seen 1P sellers being very profitable. It's a hard take, but definitely the 1P reporting is very, very poor. So we have to do a lot of manual work. It's very complicated on the 1P side. So I would say unless you have like really strong margins, like 1P will be very tough.
Also, I think that you lose pricing. I think to me, that's very important. Like you want to control your price. And so now, by the way, imagine you're selling multi-channel, you're going to have price dilution on Amazon because Amazon always likes to try to beat everyone's price. So I think this is why ConnectBooks could be super helpful for a 1P seller. Number one is because like you don't get visibility, you don't get transparency. And so your platform is going to really break it down because you're not going to have that kind of reporting.
Yeah, 1P, it's really hard. It's really, I mean, there's a lot of like manual work that has to go in order to get, you have to basically take every remittance and upload it and decipher it, and it's a big job. So it makes it complicated on one end because people, when you don't have the visibility on 1P, it's hard to scale because you're just like in the unknown, versus with 3P, there's so much more available.
Yep.
Great. Thanks again to the audience for putting your questions in. I just wanted to, ask maybe one or two more, unless you guys have any more questions from the audience. But you guys have been in the industry a long time. So are there any other valuable lessons that you've learned that you want to share, or maybe that you've experienced with one of your clients or with a seller over the years that might help somebody else on this call when it comes to profit or pricing?
So,
A
so
big
I would
open-ended
just
question.
Yeah, so I would just say one thing is that, what someone's asked me, like, what if, like, what do most common good sellers have? The answer is they all know the numbers. So sometimes you work with people, I know it sounds a little boring and stupid. I know my numbers, but there's knowing your numbers and then there's really knowing your numbers. Like knowing your numbers is really cold, like knowing it in the middle of your sleep, understanding, what is my overhead? What is my break-even point? The bigger you scale, the bigger the operation is going to go. And you just want to make sure you're doing it right. Last 2 years was a very crazy worldwide, and it still is. E-commerce is going through its own turbulence. It's all out there. Everyone sees it. And one thing, and I've seen quite a lot of sellers shut down. And I've seen a lot of sellers actually even make even more money in the last 2 years than they made the years before. And the one thing that I can, commonly say is that the sellers that really survived and the sellers that really, continue to go. I'm not going to say that nobody didn't have a hard month, here and there, but they ultimately pulled through it and were profitable throughout the last 2 years. All of them, one thing, they knew their numbers really well. They understood exactly, how to run their operations, when do they need to cut, when they don't need to cut, what is their margins, where they make money. They weren't playing games. They were like facing reality, understanding what's happening, and just being consistent. And the other factor, which I also saw in the past happening, is like I was working once with a seller who was very profitable, but never knew his numbers. And he always said, "What do I care? My bank account just keeps going up." The problem is, the problem happens is when something goes the wrong way and you don't know where it is, because if you don't know your numbers, you don't know where to pull the trigger, and you don't know what to do. So in that case, it really didn't end well for him. But the idea is, what I've seen with most big sellers, they all know the numbers, they know it well, they take the time and effort to put it in to get it right. And that's how, when it's, in these rough times, they know how to deal with it and they know how to stay ahead of the curve.
I think that's very sound advice. Knowing numbers. I think the challenge for a lot of Amazon sellers has been, well, like, I know my numbers and the numbers aren't good because the market sucks or tariffs are happening and things are out of my control. And this has been particularly challenging, right? I see brands all day long that are questioning their decisions. They're trying to figure out if their future will change. So it's been needless to say, it's been a challenge. And so I recently actually read a really good book around this called The Dip by Seth Godin. I really liked his work. I really like his writing. It's very down to earth. And it's talking about like knowing when you're sort of at this like cul-de-sac and when to keep going and when to not keep going. And I think that's important, like life. It's like an important life lesson of knowing when you should keep going, when not to. I think a lot of brands are still trying to figure out, hey, things used to be amazing post-COVID, and now things have gotten a lot worse. And maybe you never had a moat to begin with. You never had a competitive advantage. And so knowing when to give up is super important, because like time is so valuable and we're here on this planet for such a short time. How do you put your time to use in the most valuable way possible? So I think that's an important lesson that I've been thinking about, especially me as I just turned 40. And I'm thinking about, okay, like, is this, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to be doing what I'm doing today? Or am I on the right path? And I just keep on asking myself, am I on the right path? Because as you know, every Amazon brand uh, has been against every odd for the past 3 or 4 years. So
Good. Thank you for sharing that. All right. Well, I'm going to just take a second here and share a couple special offers that we do have. Let me just see. Is my screen showing okay?
yes.
Yay.
All right. Yeah, so we do have a couple special offers as a thank you to everybody for joining today, and we'll continue to stay on for any other questions that come in here. But Connect Books is offering a free trial. As always, we have a 30-day free trial, but special for everybody on this webinar, you do get 50% off your first 3 months in addition to that free trial. But this does expire at the end of August. So just use coupon code webinar50. And Chad is offering also a very generous deal for everybody on the webinar today. You get a 20% discount for the entire year. So again, this expires August 30th as well.
I'm
So you
not
can
seeing
use that
your
QR code.
Can you move to the
Yep.
other screen? I only see the Connect Books.
Oh,
You gotta move
so
it.
it's not showing the right screen then. Okay, let's see. There we go. Okay, I was showing the wrong screen.
There you go.
There
And
we
also we
go.
can show the other screen too, just so everyone has both.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Yeah, I was showing the wrong one. So 20% discount for an entire year on Prophecy. Just use the code CONNECT, but there's the QR code if you want to go ahead and scan that. You can also email Chad at chad@prophecy.com. I put that in the chat as well. And just kind of in closing here, as we're heading to Q4, any tips as we enter the holiday season for sellers, whether it's related to pricing or profit or not? You know, we're getting close to September and lots of deadlines and things are coming up. So I know it's top of mind for a lot of sellers.
I would just say one thing about Q4 that I actually worked with a seller last year. We're actually preparing for Q4. One thing I would say is that take your numbers from let's say the month of July, take your storage fee and just triple it and just check how much money you're gonna make. So it's one of the things is it really depends on what category you're in. So like if you're like in a holiday category, which is like toys that do way better, then you're off to a good start in Q4. Some people are not in a good category, meaning let's say, like home and kitchen, which like sells pretty much straight throughout the year. It's not like if it's not a massive thing that people buy in the holiday, then the challenge is that you get hit with so many additional fees in Q4 and the fees go up way higher. So one of the ways I've been very good at it is just Q4, I think ideally is at least 3 times the price. The storage fee is at least 3 times the price. So if you're, let's say, paying $20,000 a month, you'll be paying like $60,000 a month in Q4. So what you should try to do is if you feel like you'll be able to pull an additional profit to offset that storage fees, otherwise you want to try to build some sort of plan where you maybe lower the stock a little bit and try to optimize, but just foresee that those storage fees will soon kick in at a very high rate.
Right.
That's
very
good advice. That's really
Yeah.
good advice. I like that 3x thing. I would say knowing what, for me, going to the fourth quarter, I can't believe we're almost there, would be careful of what metric you worship. And so there's a lot of these like metrics out there that I think are thrown around often. And these are metrics that Amazon loves, like ACOS, because Amazon's really good at showing you what you make, but not good at showing you what you keep, right? So if you're basing everything on a revenue number without all the hidden fees, all the other fees associated with Amazon, you are doing yourself and your business a disservice. For example, ACOS is really an Amazon fee or built for agencies, really. Profit is the heartbeat of your company. So what I would be doing is replacing every revenue embedded metric in your business with a profit embedded metric, because at the end of the day, that is the only thing that counts.
Excellent. Well, thanks again to everybody for joining our webinar today. We enjoyed hosting Chad and Nachman with all of the valuable advice that they were able to give. Hopefully you were able to get some good nuggets out of it and learn something new, or maybe able to go back and apply some of these things within your own business. But if you have any questions or anything that we can do to continue to support you, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. And certainly wish you all a great Q4 season. As we just said, it's going to be here before we know it. But thanks again to Chad and Nachman for joining today, and to all of our audience. So happy selling to all.
Thanks everybody for tuning in.
Thank you all.
Colleen, thank you, Nachman.
Thanks a lot.